broadcast around the world. Thanks everyone for joining us on the Solar Objections live action role play. I have the pleasure to introduce a big UFC fan, fellow poker player, Solar Pro, and my friend, Solar Joe.
Thanks, Bruce. And I have the pleasure to introduce Nathan Skousen, who's been in solar since 2014. And this guy's been there and done that, worked at the biggest solar companies, knows this stuff, and especially knows storage and generators and off-grid applications. And he is super busy, having a baby in 2 weeks. So thank you so much for making some time for us, Nathan. How you doing, man?
Good. A lot better. First day without a fever since I tested positive for COVID. So, well, I had a fever for like 5 days before that, but feeling a lot better.
I'm so glad you're feeling better and able to be able to do this. I know your brain is probably a little foggy and not 100%, so it's all good. But yeah, thanks for being here. And everybody watching, you know, Nathan is making it here after COVID and he's doing this. So if you appreciate it and you're excited that he's on here, go put it in the comments section. Let's go. And if you guys have any questions for Nathan or any comments or objection you want him to handle, this is a good time to put it in the comment section. But if you want your name shown, you have to go to the bottom of the post and go to the StreamYard's link and give us permission to show your name, or it'll just say Facebook user. But today we're doing things a little different. We're going to have Nathan do a little overview of different storage options and kind of give us his feedback of the benefits and drawbacks to each. So let's get started.
All right. So, yeah, so since NIM 2.0s when I started digging into storage and batteries, we saw that it was going to be a big shift. The power companies were starting to back away from being so generous with solar by doing the non-bypassable charges, time of use, and we really understood the advantages of that. So kind of had me get a little bit obsessive over it. So I really like learning new stuff. So kind of dove right in, learned all the different batteries, how they worked, how a hybrid system works in general, how off-grid systems work, a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of asking a lot of people, a lot of questions. And here we are. We sell a lot of batteries. We get a lot of questions from customers about it because it can be very confusing even for people who sell it to know what size this battery or this customer needs, what they want to power. It's not as easy as downloading somebody's usage and having this target number that you have to hit, because you have to hit multiple target numbers and be able to hit those for a series of time concurrently or at separate times with only the battery or with battery and solar. So there's a lot more factors to look into, and a lot more things have to happen in the right sequence and at the right time in order for your system to really work correctly in how you sold it.
So
yeah,
I have a question for you then.
Yeah.
So how do you explain in layman's terms to a homeowner when they say, yeah, what if I'm stuck with no power? How does this thing work?
So basically go over that their system is self-contained. It's called islanding their system or a microgrid. So we explain to them, you know, in a normal system, when you're only grid tied and you have solar only, when the grid goes down, your system goes down. And that's because you can't backfeed the grid. I'm sure other people have told you this, and a lot of people understand that because they understand that that's the same way if they have their own generator at home, that they have to turn off that ability to backfeed the grid. So when you explain the battery system, you explain that now the battery takes place where the grid used to be. So the overage, instead of backfeeding the grid, goes into the battery. So when the power goes out, the automatic transfer switch inside of the battery shuts off any backflow to the grid, and you still have a working system, because a working solar system needs some sort of base power to let the inverters do their thing. They need power to make power, basically. That's part of the rapid shutdown process. So now the battery can take place as the grid, as your base form of power to accept any overage from the solar to charge the battery. And then as you need that power in your home, you pull it, and it comes from power that's being produced by solar, or from the battery, or from a mix of both of them to power your loads. So what we do is we separate your panel. Right now you have a main panel. After your system, you're going to have a panel that stays up during an outage and is powered by your own islanded system with your solar and battery. And you will have a panel that goes down, and that's going to be your non-essential loads, like a dryer, for example. If your power goes out, you probably don't need to dry your clothes. You can dry them outside or something like that. So that would be the example of the power that gets shut off from your system. And then we have your essential loads panel, where we put your lights, your refrigerator, in some cases the air conditioning, and that's called your essential loads, and that is what's powered during an outage.
So like, I'll have a lot of homeowners not sure if they want a generator or smart battery. How do you weigh the difference for the homeowner? Is it up to them, or do you kind of give them their options, or do you listen to what they need?
So a lot of people come to us for the generators. There's much fewer companies installing generators than solar. So we get a lot of calls for backup power, and a lot of times when they have solar, they choose to go the battery route. If they don't have solar, it's almost always because they're covered in trees. Usually the people who want a generator live in an area with a lot of trees, and they don't have solar. They don't want to cut down their trees. And really the only way to get backup power is a generator. Yeah, you could have a battery only that was charged from the grid, and when the power goes out, the battery powers your loads, but there's no way to recharge it besides a generator. Kind of like when you see the car charging stations being powered by diesel generators.
Yeah.
But
defeats the purpose.
Yeah. So a lot of times they go with the generator if they can't get solar. But if they already have solar, or if they don't have solar and they can get solar, a lot of times they choose the battery and solar route, for the simple reason is a generator is just an expense. It's something they have to buy. They're still going to have their power bill. And they could buy that generator and never even use it. Whereas if you get a solar generator, and that's what you can call it a solar generator.
Okay.
You're able to eliminate your power bill, one. So you're eliminating a cost. So that's the same pitch as solar. And now your ability to give yourself power during an outage, which is why you wanted a generator, is there with your solar that you already bought anyways in order to eliminate the power bill. So you've already spent money on your fuel. And that's how we pitch it. It's like, hey, listen, if you get a generator, you're going to have to buy fuel. When you already have solar, you already bought the fuel. If we're pitching them solar, hey, that's going to eliminate your bill. And now it becomes the fuel for your generator, which is a battery. So it ends up, when you do the cost of a generator plus the cost of PG&E plus the cost of fuel for the generator, that's by far your most expensive option. Then your second cheapest option is solar and a generator, and the cost of fuel. And the cheapest option is solar and a battery and no fuel. So when they're given those three options, most people go towards the cheapest option that gives them the goal that they want. Especially when you go through a lot of misconceptions about batteries. They only last 10 years. Well, with the amount of outages that we have, your generator's probably going to last 10 years. I mean, generators come with a 3 to 5 year warranty, the ability to extend them to 7 to 10 years, where batteries have 10 to 15 year warranties, and Enphase is coming out with a 15-year extended warranty on top of their 10, a 25-year warranty.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of misconceptions about generators being cheap. A whole home automatic backup generator right now, everyone who's installing those are between $15,000 and $18,000, depending on the install situation, depending on if you're bringing in fuel, depending on a lot of things. Then you got to remember you have oil changes on it. You have to test run it every month. You have maintenance. We sell you an ongoing maintenance package. You have thousands and thousands of dollars of maintenance on top of that.
How about the noise? Is that a real issue?
Yeah, sometimes the noise, it's not in the city ordinance, so you can't even get a generator. So generators are very hard to permit as well. Especially in areas of California where the houses are right on top of each other, because there's so many setback requirements of where the generator can be from a window, from any open source to the house, from a fence, from an air conditioning, so a lot of times there's literally nowhere to put the generator on their property, and a battery is their only option. So when they're weighing out all these things and they're like, hey, a generator, is $17,000 plus an average of about $1,000 a year of fuel, I'm going to be in this thing $27,000 when I can get a battery add-on for $23,000, a very, very good battery add-on, for $23,000, $25,000 minus a tax credit. So, when they're looking at a battery being net $18,000 to $20,000, and that's not even when you get into other rebates that batteries can have, where they're looking at net a generator $26,000, $27,000. So usually the people that go with a generator, they're going with a generator because they cannot get solar panels. And without solar panels, a battery is it's kind of useless to have a battery that's grid charged only.
That makes sense, and I love the way you explained it, because to me, you just made it a no-brainer, and it made it really simple and understanding. So now with the Homeowner Act, because this is a question that I haven't gotten, and I want to know how to answer it, and you might be the perfect person to ask this. Now, does adding a smart battery or generator add value to the home every time, or is that something that is dependent on the real estate agent?
Yeah, I would say it all comes down to the real estate agent, because I've seen massive changes in California today, the way real estate agents view solar compared to the way they viewed it when I very first started. Once they learn that it's a massive benefit to sell it, because I'm sure you have too, you get on the phone with your customers, a customer you sold a year ago, their realtor, and you're like, no, tell your clients this, tell them if they don't go solar, have fun paying a $300 electric. Exactly. Just bluff them. Just tell them, you know what? I'm going to take the panels with me. Have fun paying a $300 bill instead of $120. Wait, what do you mean? Well, if I take these panels with me, your bill was $300. Yeah, dude, you're moving from an apartment to your first home. Did you expect your bill to be the same? So what I found is that when people were buying homes with solar, a lot of times it was first home buyers that were scared of the solar payment. And that's because they were comparing their electric bill and their 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And that's what they thought. So they're like, wait, my electric bill is only $100 a month. This solar bill is $150. This is crazy. They don't know that moving into a house, their bill is going to be $300. So they don't understand that value. They don't understand the value in $150 a month until you have to tell them, hey, listen, your bill's not going to be $100 anymore. It's going to be $300. Now $150 seems very cheap. So it's kind of the same with generators and backup batteries. If they don't see the value, if they've never lived in an area that gets shut off from power every time the PSPS program, if they've never lived in an area that, you know, they get shut off for 3 or 4 days, 3 or 4 times a year, they're not going to understand the value in that generator. But if they're people who've lived out in the hills and stuff like that, I mean, you go out here, almost everyone has generators. Not automatic backup generators, but at least a 220 plug where they can wheel up their gen. And so in those areas, or people who've lived in those areas, they see a massive benefit in backup because they're used to using it, and that value's there in their eyes. So it
that
really
makes sense.
on the buyer.
So that makes sense. And I was going to actually see if we can kind of go through each of the most popular storage batteries in the industry right now and kind of go through your opinion for each one. But I want to ask you one more question before that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So like say the homeowner has an objection, says, you know what, I like the smart battery, it's great, but I'm actually going to add it later. Is that something you say, okay, or do you kind of, is that an objection?
Yeah, we say that's fine. We explain to them though, it's more expensive to add it later because we're doing work and then we have to undo work that we did and kind of redo it, when if we would have done it like that the first time, you know, it would have saved us 20 man hours or whatever. So we explain that it is more expensive to retrofit it later. But that's definitely, I don't think very many reps push very hard of get it now. We say, okay, well, we can do it later. We can look at your usage. The good thing about having solar for a year before you get a battery, there's no guessing to sizing it. So the one recommendation I do have when you have a customer who's going to wait, make sure you put production CTs on the monitoring, not just what the solar is producing, but monitor everything you're using as well, so you can really size that battery correctly a year later.
Perfect. All right. So what I want to do now is kind of go through each of the smart battery major players and kind of give us the benefits and drawbacks to each and kind of your opinion. Is that cool?
Yeah.
All right. First one, stores. What do you think?
Oh, they're, I mean, hands down the best as far as helping you. Everett taught me, spent hours and hours on the phone with me. Learned.
Shout out Everett Brewer.
Yeah. He's definitely like the master educator. That guy knows a ton and loves talking about it. They're bad as far as power. No one's going to come close to how much power that battery has. As far as they have a ton of new things coming out with their transfer switch and the transfer switch with the load center inside of it. That battery gets very technical with the smart circuits that you can control. And so especially if you have that customer who's kind of the Bay Area type customer, into tech, into this battery with that can just do all types of stuff, shut off loads at certain times. I mean, that's going to be a go-to battery for them. And as far as power, because that system, I mean, you can pretty easily, I would say with less components than any other system, basically give a house 200 amp service when the grid's down. So no difference. I mean, they have a 200 amp service coming from their battery system when the grid's down.
Wow. All right. That sounds great. All right. Next, I'll go rapid fire. Next one, Enphase, Encharge.
They're my favorite in the sense of so what I've learned a lot of, and this is why I like stores so much, because they don't try to pass the buck on the inverter company or any of that. All of these batteries, most of them are retrofits, meaning they're AC coupled, meaning you have an inverter for your solar panels. You have and that's a separate company. Then the inverter for your battery system, which is a separate company, then the battery company. So you're dealing with 3 different companies to troubleshoot battery issues, which these systems are more advanced, more stuff can happen. You're moving loads, you're dealing with a lot of stuff. You're dealing with BMS systems on the battery versus systems on the hybrid inverter to control that battery. And when things go wrong, it can be a nightmare dealing with, 3 different companies. And that's where Enphase, because they are the same. So all 3 of those companies are the same now. The inverter for your panels, the inverter for the battery, and the battery itself. And instead of having the whole, Vivint smart home pitch of, is your home really that smart if it takes 9 different apps, one to control your lock, one to control, it's kind of the same thing. Enphase, you have one app that beautifully displays it all. A lot of companies like Tesla do that as well, but a lot of companies don't. You have multiple apps to see the production of your panels versus the health of your battery and so on, where Enphase has an amazing app, and like stores. So both of these batteries are big importance on both of these. So stores and Enphase are my top 2, is that they are lithium iron phosphate, LFP. Very, very important. And step 1 is look at the chemistry of the battery. I really don't know why anyone would put anything other than LFP in their house. I really don't know why you would. But they're both...
It's safer and it'll last longer, right?
Yeah. Even if it was the same safety, it lasts 3 times as many cycles.
3 times?
Yeah. Yeah. So then even if it was safer, it could last as many cycles, but it's safe. But it's both of those. It's safer and it lasts more cycles. So it's just this no-brainer. Yeah, they're a bit more expensive than cheaper battery systems. However, you should never be selling the batteries on the total price. Just like you never sell solar on a total price, because that's going to confuse a customer. It's like, wait, why is your 10 kilowatt system more expensive than his 7 kilowatt? You have to sell on the benefit. The benefit is the kilowatt hours. And that's also why well, why is my neighbor's 8 and I need 9 and he uses more? Well, because you don't get as much sun as your neighbor. So you got to look at the benefit, which is the kilowatt hours. The benefit of your battery is also the kilowatt hours that the battery is going to produce, which in other terms is the cycles that battery is going to put out. So if I have a system that's going to put out almost 3 times more cycles, that's the same as a solar system that's going to put out 3 times as much kilowatt hours. So as long as my price isn't 3 times as much, I am much cheaper. So we train our reps to sell, just like you sell solar on a per kilowatt or per watt price, you sell batteries on a per cycle price. And then you look at Tesla's per cycle price is like double that of Enphase or stores, even though their upfront initial price to be purchased at that capacity rate is less.
And you said there's a 15-year extension coming up with the warranty for Enphase?
Yeah, I don't know if that was public.
You said it. It's out of the bag. It's out of the bag. We're showing here on Solar Objections.
Coming out. They'll be. Claudio will know a lot about that. He's on Solar Post. He's a cool guy.
All right. I got the hint. I'll move along. All right. So next one, speaking of Tesla Powerwall.
So as far as apps go, that's another one that's super cool. Like Enphase, I think Enphase copied Tesla because they look very similar, and they're both awesome. I think Enphase's is a little. It's a bit cooler though, because it will give you like your percentage of how much off grid you are. And that's something people try to chase. So if they have it for like one full year and they're like, hey, I was 87% grid. So they give you a grid independence score. With two more 3.3 batteries, I'll be 100% independent, which means basically they never spin their meter backwards or forward. It just sat there and never got touched, which is a pretty cool feeling for the customer. So they have a cool app.
Pretty much off grid.
Off grid, and the most that somebody already connected to the grid can possibly be. And then the downside is not really Tesla's fault. It's the chemistry that they're using fault. It's NMC. It's going to be 2,700, 3,000 cycles or so. Just like your cell phone, everyone complains, my cell phone battery's dying. It's not as good as it was. Well, think of a cycle. Think of dropping a bouncy ball, and you just drop it. It's never going to bounce up to where you dropped it from ever again. It's impossible. Against the laws of physics. So same as a charge rate on the battery. Every time that chemical reaction happens, just like every time that ball bounces, it's not going to go up as far, and it's eventually going to fizzle out and die. That bounce rate is that death rate, that half-life on NMC happens much faster than LFP. So imagine an LFP bouncy ball. That thing almost touches your hand again, and then the bouncy ball next to it is like an inch away from the hand. Then the next bounce is an inch and a half away. Then the next bounce. So you can imagine how much longer that more dense, more bouncy ball lasts. It's kind of the same idea when you're looking at the chemical reaction with NMC versus LFP.
That makes sense. Is that why Tesla is going towards LFP now? Like I've seen that they're changing their.
I've been saying it for years that I think all battery companies will, at least for a home battery, because the advantages to NMC have no advantages in a home battery. They're lighter. So what? It's a home battery going in your garage. Who cares how heavy it is? That's a big deal for phones in a car. And they can have a faster discharge rate and a faster charge rate. But for a house, you kind of want it to be, you want those peaks and those abilities to do that. But you kind of want it to be more of a steady flow for, decades. Not a burst of power for, 10 years.
I got just a couple more. We'll get through the next ones too. I really appreciate your time, Nathan. How about the LG Chem?
So that's LG Chem and Tesla are pretty much the same. They're basically the same batteries. LG Chem, the inverter's not as powerful, so just can't power as many loads. I don't see why anyone would install that one. I mean, for the amount of time it's going to last and the amount of power it can give out, you can't really stack it to be super powerful like you can with stores or Enphase or even a Powerwall. You can stack those. So there's no real advantages at all I see to LG Chem.
All right, so let's move along. How about generac?
That's kind of the same as Tesla and LG Chem. It can get more powerful than both of those if you go to their highest, like 20 kilowatt hour system and you stack it as big as possible. But you can do that same thing with Powerwall as well. The downside to generac is you have to use their inverters, which there goes all your retrofit customers, because who has generac inverters on their panels? And so it's really only for new customers, and I can't go away from Enphase for inverters on the panels. There's no telling over 10 years your truck roll rate and all that. They're just too new for inverters. How
about a Sunruns? Is their battery similar to also?
No, I don't. They from what I know, they do Powerwall, LG Chem, and I think they're going to start doing in-phase in certain markets. Maybe
Oh, I
not.
thought they're coming out their own. I guess I was mistaken of that.
Maybe I haven't heard anything on that.
So last thing I wanted to bring up is off-grid applications. When is that like a good thing to talk about? Or when is it like you say, no, that's not for you? Is it very rare? Because it does come up.
So it's less rare than it used to be with all the houses that got burnt down and all the people rebuilding their houses. When you look at building, so a lot of people mistake off-grid with middle of nowhere. I can buy a plot of land on a paved road, and it may not have, my utilities hooked in yet. PG&E may need to bring either underground or overground 2, 4, 6, 7 poles to get to my service entrance. They're very, very expensive. All the quotes that I've seen is around $1,000 a yard. So you're looking for someone who's 100 yards off the road. Well, $100,000 just to get connected to the grid. And then you got, your 30, 40 cents a kilowatt hour after that. Or you can pay, $110,000 for this kick-ass ground mount system with a shed for batteries and everything, and giving yourself 150 amp service, 200 amp service, a backup generator for in case, there's a fire for a week or something and there's no sun for a week. You can charge your batteries with the generator and have the batteries run the system. You could get something like that, because the downside for off-grid is, when you're designing an on-grid system, you're counting on the NIM. So a lot of times, in your low solar production months, they're actually using a lot more than it's producing. So think in your head, those graphs that you've seen, most of your systems are going to have to be about a 200% offset in order to offset 100% of those low producing months. So off-grid systems tend to be, way more than they really need because they can't bank that power for 8 months in their battery system, because then they just have to overbuy all the batteries. But a system like that, you could get them for $100,000, maybe $105,000 minus a tax credit. So instead of $100,000 plus monthly utility bills, they're paying $75,000, $80,000, no utility bills. And it's like, hey, either way, PG&E is not going to take a solar loan. They're not going to take a 20, 30. So you're paying $100,000 cash. Either way, how would you rather do it? So that's when the off-grid pitches become very, very easy. And there's a lot of that business going around if you kind of want to search for new development going up that's kind of been burnt down. Cabins, stuff like that. It can be very expensive to bring in power if power's never been there before or got burnt away.
Boom. That was awesome, Nathan. I know that we're kind of getting late already, but do you have a few more minutes? I think we love to do a quick Q&A.
Yeah. No, let's get some more stuff. There's just so much to go over, with batteries. So yeah, definitely all the questions possible.
Let me get into the comment section. Solar Pro Q&A. So let's go through it here. First comment. Let's go. That was Mateo. LRA is a big one.
Yeah, so that's rotor amps. So that's when you're looking at, well pumps or typically air conditioning. I have yet to see a house with an air conditioner where the air conditioner was not the largest LRA in the house. So there's a lot of appliances that take a lot more electricity to get that motor cranked and running than it does to start that motor. So an air conditioning fan's very large, and you can kind of hear it. If you've ever been outside, you hear it like, and the air conditioner turns on, and then it lowers down to keep that thing spinning. So a lot of times if your air conditioner only uses, 20, 25 amps, it can take 70, 75 amps to turn on, which is why I say for big systems, we like to look at stores, because you can easily get 100 amps out of stores. Very, very easily, very inexpensive, and turn on those ACs, no problem. Plus, a lot of customers understand that they're only going to be running the AC during the day because they don't want to drain that battery so fast without a source to be charging it. So the advantage to a system like stores is you're going to get the amps from what the battery can crank out, plus the amps of what your solar system's producing in that moment as well, powered to those loads. So you can easily turn on air conditionings. I would say LRA of about 75 to 90 is the average that I see. So you can easily turn those things on, and throw on a soft start. So we've done those on
Soft start.
They take 10 minutes to install, 15 minutes to install, depending on the air conditioner. And the few that we've done it on, the last one that we did lowered it from, it was like on the label, it was 74, and then our voltmeter spiked at like 22 to turn on the AC. So it worked really good with that pairing. I have a feeling it depends on the manufacturer of the AC and the manufacturer of the soft start of how well they work, but they all advertise that they can cut the LRA by like 50 to 70%. So
right.
a mix of choosing the right battery system, not a battery system like LG Chem that can do, 20 amps max for 10 seconds, but a battery system that can do 100 amps, along with a soft start, you're not going to have any problems.
Hey, everybody watching right now, we only have a few more minutes with Nathan. Get your questions in now. This guy is information he's given us is awesome. So this is your opportunity. So we got a couple more comments. I want to get through it, Nathan. We got a Facebook user that says, wow, great information. We got Eddie Fernandez. Great info, Nathan Skousen. Eddie's the man.
Yeah.
So Vincent Lenny has a question for you. Can't you get generators for a lot less than 15K?
Maybe in other states, not in Northern California. It's supply and demand too. So when I say, 15 to 18K, that's a 22 kilowatt automatic start generator. That's with the cement slab, that's with all the permits, that's with all the gas work with the plumber, that's everything all in. Now when we first started installing generators 4 or 5 years ago, we couldn't sell them for $1 over 13 grand. Now people are begging us to pay, and sometimes the generators are out. We have people, we'll pay you 20, 25. It's like, sorry, you can pay us 100. They're not available. So a lot of demand has pushed that price up too. I would say about 3 or 4 years ago, they were about 13, and now they're, 15 to 18. The equipment itself costs about 5-6 grand. As far as just the generator, but then you have the cement slab, you have the plumbing work, you have to have another gas tank. There's a lot more than just the generator equipment. That's what I explained to customers. I'm like, hey, listen, you're being charged $3.50 a watt. The equipment's only $1 a watt. You're being charged 3.5 times more than the equipment. So when people go on Home Depot, I can get a 20 generator for 5 grand. It's like, yeah, and you can get a 6 kilowatt system for 6 grand too on the internet. But that's not how much it's going to cost you. So just like a 5K solar system is only 5K in equipment. Do you sell it for 5K? No, you sell it for 20K. Well, when generator equipment costs 5K, we sell it for 15 to 17K. It's the same thing.
So along the same lines, Eddie has a question for you. What is the best price for a quality of backup battery today?
I would say if you're looking at a price, when you're spending around 20 to 25K on your battery system, you're probably going with an LFP system. You're probably going with a system that can do above 50 amps. You're probably going with a really good value system. You're going with a lot of cycles. Now, when you're going with a battery that's 12 to 14K, yeah, it's cheaper, but trust me, the value's not there. If you break down the value that each dollar is buying, you're getting a lot less on that 14K system than that 20K system. Now, don't go buy a Powerwall for 20K. That's not what I'm make it more about. It's just, if you're going to say, hey, the best price, I would say if you're a customer, if you're hearing prices around 20, 25K, that's probably an LFP system.
So we got a fan of one of your answers. I'm not sure which one. I think it was about you answered the LG Chem question earlier. All right. So we got a new rep who has a question for you. You ready?
Yep.
Newer rep here. Let's say I build out a system at 75% offset, built in Atlanta where there's a lot of tree coverage. Can I add a battery like an LG Chem to build offset that's 25% offset? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I think what they're talking about is time of use rates. I don't know Atlanta's NEM program, but whenever you have a delta of rate, so whenever there's a different rate at a certain time of day than another certain time of day, you have the ability to do what's called rate arbitrage, meaning I have the ability to store my power in my battery when it's, when the power company is buying the buyback for 6 cents a kilowatt hour and then unleashing that power at 8 o'clock at night when it's 20 cents. So now I have to produce less kilowatt hours to get a 100% offset, not in the sense of a 100% kilowatt hour to kilowatt hour offset, but in the sense of a 100% dollar amount offset, meaning we're square. Because I might have produced less power, but I was able to give it to you at more expensive times. So I think that's what he's asking. But
yeah, I want to stress that this is only for time of use. If it's not time of use, there's no offset that's going to be able to add power for you there.
Exactly. Yeah, when there's no time. Yeah, Joe, it's mathematically impossible for me to just because that battery doesn't just generate power out of nowhere. It had to suck it from your solar first, so it negated it from your solar. Now that makes a lot of sense when I can give it back and get
added more.
Then that solar would have got. Yeah, then if it's 1-to-1, no, you're never, ever, ever going to gain offset ever. It's impossible.
No, that's just a newer rep. He led with that, so it's all good. Any questions or comments? That's fine, guys. We are almost done, Nathan, man. Anything you want to add in about storage or backup batteries? Anything else before I ask you a couple questions?
Yeah, I would say a lot of stuff. Just like solar, don't just spout out stuff you hear like, oh, batteries aren't worth it. Batteries are still in their infancy. Because all that stuff to a customer who's done some research or to a customer who's going to talk to a rep who's done some research, you're going to look pretty foolish. Because batteries have been around a hell of a lot longer than net metering's been around. When solar first started, it's not like you signed a NEM agreement with your power company. No, you had a battery bank. NEM is the new thing, and the utility companies are already trying to screw the customers as best as they can possible out of those agreements. Battery backup systems have been around batteries have been around forever, since before solar panels. So it's a very old technology. LFP was actually invented in the 70s. It was before lithium ion. It was lithium iron, but it was heavy. It didn't work out for what we needed it for at the time, which was things like phones. emerging into cars. So the technology's been around for a long time. It's not too expensive. I mean, in a lot of markets, at least in California, it's still cheaper than the utility company. And when selling batteries and storage, definitely get away from savings. If that's that customer, great, sell them solar only. But if you can fill, or you know that you can direct this customer to a type of customer who's more concerned about energy independence, and hey, as long as I'm paying the same or a couple bucks less, and I have this badass system that works in, you know, a nuclear holocaust, then that's awesome. I'll pay the same price for that. I'll lock in today's rate for that, because a lot of these really good battery systems, if they're paying $250 a month, you're going to come in at like $250 a month. So it becomes a pitch on energy independence and taking control and not being pushed around by things like NEM 3.0 coming out. And there's just a lot less you have to worry about at that point.
Hey, I know you told me a little bit about what you did before solar, and I was just curious, and if you could give us a little bit more information about what you did before. So it was pretty interesting what you did before solar, and how was the transition?
So out of high school, I got my life insurance license and Series 63 license. Actually, me and my wife now, we were just dating at the time. We both got licensed, worked for my insurance, my uncle's insurance company. So that was really interesting. We would go to, he mostly dealt with car dealerships, about 50, 60 car dealerships across California, Nevada, and Hawaii. So we got to go to like Vegas and Hawaii. We're like 18, 19, 20 years old. So pretty cool, because we'd come in and we'd have to have all the employees. It was mandatory. They had to talk to us. We'd do their pre-taxing, like the cafeteria 125 plan. How you can pre-tax your insurance payments, and then try to sell them cash value life insurance. And like, hey, you know, we saved you $50 in taxes on your paycheck. You're never going to notice that, but let's just automatically have your payroll roll that $50 into this cash value life insurance. It's a pretty good pitch. So we did that for 2-3 years. And then we both went over and worked at GoDaddy in Arizona, which was a crazy.
For a while, right?
Yeah.
For a while.
Like 7 years.
7 years.
Worked in their executive accounts department, which,
wow,
they're top customers. You get your own account manager to buy all your domains, help you with your portfolio. So kind of my claim to fame clients I had. So we knew the guy who invented Siri, actually. Because Siri was just an app on the App Store. And it was funny. One time he was telling me the story. He's like, yeah, I was just sitting at home and I get a call, and the guy's like, hey, is this, I forget the guy who invented his name, but is this so-and-so? Yeah, this is Steve. And he goes, I just paused for a minute, and I go, Jobs? And he's like, yeah, Steve Jobs, what's up? And yeah, they just bought the app from him one day, but he's not allowed to say how much or anything.
Wow.
And then also Weed Maps, when they were very, very, very first starting out as a website, they were one of my customers, helped him kind of grow it. He'd go to concerts and everything, and he had a pretty robust website. And Roblox, I don't know if you have kids who play with those little.
Yeah.
10 years ago, no one knew who Roblox was, but they were actually GoDaddy's largest customer. They spent like $300,000 a month in server space. And then we had Manwin. Nobody knows the company Manwin. Manwin is the company who owns YouPorn, Pornhub, and browsers. They were a massive internet company. I mean, they literally owned about 1/3 of the traffic of all the internet. Would go through their websites. So and then started from there. We moved to New York and started solar, like 60 miles from the border of Canada, which is the weirdest place to start solar when it's snowing like half the year. that's where I started selling, and it was awesome. It was so easy selling there. My very, very, very first quarter. So I didn't know what anything was. I didn't know what a kilowatt hour was. We didn't have any managers or anything. Me and my brother were kind of hired as the managers. We didn't know anything. We didn't even know what the utility company was called. We were calling it American Electric, but it was National Grid. So we were
both words were wrong.
Yeah. So somehow we made it work. But my first quarter, I did like 250 kilowatts. It's still like one of my biggest quarters ever, because we would just knock on the doors and say, "Hey, we're the guys talking about the solar. Do you have any questions?" And people would, on the install day, there'd be people who would come out of their houses and like, because they've never seen a solar panel before. So it was a lot different back then. And then moved to California, and then that's where I was born and raised. So back to my hometown, kind of big circle.
That's awesome, man. That's a great story. We have actually a couple more comments, and I'm gonna let you go. Okay. Comment from Facebook user, appreciate it, guys. And then one more. Sold one of your batteries 2 weeks ago. Maybe he's talking about stores or Enphase. I'm not sure.
Yeah, probably. I'm good friends with Everett, so a lot of people think I work at stores, but he's just kind of my who's the guy in Star Wars? Obi-Wan. So it was probably stores. The customer will be happy for sure.
That's awesome.
I like that too. So, anytime their customer, they have an app. So anytime the customer's power goes out, I get a little alert, so I can text the customer like, "Hey, your power's out." Sometimes, because stores instant, a lot of times they don't even know. They're like, "Oh, really? We're watching TV." It's like, "No, it went out. Like, go look outside." It's like, "Oh shit, like, we have a light."
They don't even realize it. Hey, that's the best. We normally realize the power is out. That's a good sign.
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you go. I know you gave us a lot of your time. If anybody wants to reach out to you, how can they? And any other last thoughts you have?
Yeah, they can just message me on Facebook. Last thoughts would be, you really just got to do your own research in batteries. Learn what things like LRA mean. Learn what an amp is. Learn what a kilowatt hour is, what a kilowatt is. Watts times volts equal amps. Learn all the basics. Watch a lot of YouTube, because if you want to be good at selling solar, you're going to have to be good at selling batteries and understanding them, because it's going to be just like Hawaii. It's going to end up being zero export.
Awesome, man. Again, appreciate your time. Next week, we're going to have another solar pro, Riley Traveler. If you don't know this guy is a solar stud, and can't wait to see his bio. But Nathan, again, man, thank you so much for being here. We're gonna have to do it again. We are out. Peace.
All right, see you guys.